What's happening, everybody? I'm back as the resident supervillain, Mr. J. Washington. I'm here with my review for One Night in Miami on Amazon Prime. Now, if you have not seen this movie yet, please come on back because there will be spoilers. I have so much that I want to say about this movie, and I don't know if it's a lot in a long time or so much in a short span, but there's so much and so many emotions in which I have in this. And this is one of those films I'd heard about since Venice of last year, the Venice Film Festival. And of course, all my homies who were critics who got a chance to screen it then and, saw it when it came out around Christmas and everything. And again, all of the praise behind it, especially the praise for Regina King. And me personally, I've been a Regina King fan, since I can remember. Watching her back as Brenda in 227. I think many of us who are in my generation will go back that far, but then I'll fast forward to finding out she's the voice of Riley and Huey Freeman in the Boondocks. Fast forward even further, Bill Street Could Talk, Watchmen, etc., etc. And then to hear she was directing this again, I already wanted to see what it was. I love the sister's work, and so I'm always going to support. And then also I had to remind myself about watching it for my own eye. And what I mean by that, and for many of you all who are watching this, is we see and hear about a lot of films, TV shows, etc., that come in with so much hype and bravado and highly touted. There are people who are loving it and praising it consistently, and we all go into seeing it. We have to see it for ourselves and not of, well, everybody said it's going to be this. Let me see if I see that or if I see something else. So I wanted to make sure I went in to watch this for myself, and that I truly did. There's so much to say about this. This movie, if you didn't know, is a fictitious account of four legends hanging out one night in Miami after the Cassius Clay fight against one Sonny Lipton. And those legends being Cassius Clay, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, and Malcolm X. And before I go into the praising of these portrayals, like the way the story starts, it introduces each character so we know of them, but so you can know them. Let's just say it like that. You know of them, but you should know them. We see Cassius Clay, excuse me. I'm so used to calling him Muhammad Ali because that was the name he died under. Of course, at the time he was Cassius Clay. We see his fight with Khan and him being cocky, him being that person who he is, being the greatest and just toying with his opponent, and then eventually getting hit once and seeing the stars and seeing the lights and stuff like that, but he still wins the fight. We see Sam Cooke bombing at the Copacabana. Sam Cooke, who's a legend, who's been selling hits, even backstage being told, don't nobody care to see you here, blah, 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 blah. They only want to see, I could have booked this magician, and to watch the all-white crowd, what we hear accounts of them just not caring. Him trying to sing a Debbie Reynolds song, and, couple of patrons like, I liked it better when Debbie Reynolds sang that. You see Jim Brown driving. You see he goes back to Georgia, and he goes and visits Mr. Carlton's house, played by Bo Bridges. And, Carlton and his granddaughter is in awe. She's starstruck. It's Jim Brown, the NFL, at her door to see her grandfather. And when Jim Brown and Carlton are sitting outside and they're sharing a lemonade and they're conversing and whatnot, and the granddaughter says, "Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt while you're entertaining, grandfather, but could you come help move something?" I forgot what it was. And he was like, okay. And he gets up to go move it. And Jim Brown gets up. Now, keep in mind, Mr. Carlton's a white guy. I forgot to include that. It's a white man that, clearly he's known for years and years, family-wise. And Jim gets up, played by Aldous Hodge. Jim gets up, and he goes to try to help him. And Mr. Carlton said, now, we don't let niggers in the house. And it was at that moment, one of those moments again, where no matter what Jim Brown has done, no matter what he has accomplished, no matter how it seems as if he is being embraced, to many he is still a nigger. Now, this is 1964, but in the time of the film, but that is still the case many times today. If you follow me on Blurs in the Hood, any other place, you know how much I talk about how there are many, especially woke white liberals, who will portray and put the face on of being an ally, being your friend, being all about helping the culture and helping people out, black people out in this. But when you find out behind closed doors, they're mocking you, you still a nigga to them, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very, for me, reflective of life because of situations I've heard about, situations I've seen and dealt with personally. And, like I said, the accounts being told. So you had that. And then you had Malcolm X. You saw an actual news program that is talking about how Malcolm X's speeches, him and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, how their speeches are hate speech, and how they're white liberals and all these people, and if it was preached, the same thing was preached by a Southern pastor, to be considered hate, and they would be considered terrorists, and these are real things. And you have Sister Betty Shabazz, his wife, watching this news program and all these different things, and for Malcolm to come in and it's so much an introduction as the story of Malcolm X, and being played by Kingsley Ben-Adir, and you see these things, and these were true in that time because Malcolm spoke of white devils because of what he was taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm speaks of white devils and how white men are just all evil, and at the time, and then granted, later in his life, he learned that not all white men were evil because after his pilgrimage to Mecca, when he prayed to some of the same people he viewed as white devils. But at this time, this is still extreme militant Malcolm X. This is still extreme militant. It's either you're black or you don't involve. I don't care. And like I said, I'll get into the further portrayal because of the way Kingsley Ben-Adir portrays Malcolm and the comparison that I had to let go in my head. Again, highly touted different things. For me, the only on-screen comparison I will always compare is Denzel Washington's in Malcolm X. And that was a riveting comparison. A portrayal, not comparison, portrayal. The way Denzel brought that character to life. But nonetheless, we see all these accounts of everything people going through. Then we fast forward to Cassius having the now famous underwater photograph, the training underwater photograph, training for his fight with Sonny Liston. And I don't want to go blow by blow, account by account, but basically we know that Ali wins the fight from Liston forfeiting. But afterwards, you have Cassius Clay. I keep saying Muhammad Ali because that was the name of his transition of his life. It's so hard always going back to Cassius Clay. I don't know if I'm the only one, but to watch the various interactions with the four of these gentlemen, to watch how they talk about their lives and their experiences, to watch the bonding and at the same time the rifts that happen. We see Cassius in his transition to becoming Muhammad Ali, praying with Brother Malcolm. We see him learning how to pray to Mecca. Malcolm teaching him, and Cassius being ready to announce that he is becoming a Muslim. And you see all these different things. You see Jim Brown as he comes in. They all talk, they all party, they ready to hang out. And it's so funny because Malcolm just wants them to stay in the room and just talk, and he wants to open up their minds about things. And again, you find out earlier from him talking to his wife, Sister Betty, that he wants to bring Cassius into his fold for his cause. Now, we know now through historical record and retellings and stories and whatnot that Malcolm was always planning to leave the nation because he didn't, even though he was strong behind the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the scandals that followed Elijah Muhammad took a toll. But to watch these portrayals, Eli Goree as Cassius Clay is so amazing. It's jaw-dropping because you can see Cassius within him. You can see the pulling and the studying of a man to become that character. As an actor myself, I understand that when you study and you don't just watch one time, you don't just read something and look at this video and say, boom, I got it. You got to really go in depth and understand who that is. And we all know, again, from the videos, from the pictures, the interviews, always was interviewed. Was never shy about being in front of the camera. Aldous Hodges, Jim Brown, there was something I expected. I guess I had an expectation, but Aldous Hodge exceeded that, and I've been a fan of Aldous Hodge for a while. I watched how that brother gave that Jim Brown powerful tone and dialect. As I said earlier, Kingsley Ben-Adir as brother Malcolm, as Malcolm X, was just phenomenal. The mannerisms, the tone, the inflection, the emotion, the militance, the reminder that later on in the film, when him and Sam Cooke get into it, as I told you guys earlier, spoiler alert, again, it is a fictitious account. When him and Sam Cooke get into it on the roof, and he said, "Jimmy, I'm about to hurt this motherfucker," and they hear Brother Malcolm swear it and things like that. That emotion you get. But overall, out of all of those, one of the ones that got me the best and got me the deepest was Leslie Odom Jr.'s portrayal of Sam Cooke. Flashy. I'm a black man succeeding in a white man's world. I'm making money when I shouldn't make money. He has the discussion with Malcolm later on in the room in the film about how, I forgot who it was, and I wish I would have reminded back, but how he had one of his artists who wrote a song. The song hit number 94 on the charts, and then he sold the right, because he owned the production company and the writer, blah blah blah, sold the rights to the song to the Rolling Stones, and the Rolling Stones made the song number one. And because they made it number one, the royalty checks, because he's the writer, comes in hand over fist. And Sam was like, "I'm a businessman. I know what I'm doing." And Malcolm getting on him, saying he's not doing more for the struggle and he's not using his voice. And he talks about how Cassius was very outspoken regardless, how Jim Brown openly outspoken regardless. And that was one of the things, I think, too, going back early when we see the introduction of Jim Brown with the situation with Mr. Carl, and how knowing how Jim Brown felt, knowing how Jim Brown was so outspoken about being black, about white people keeping black people down, especially in the 50s and 60s, knowing all these things, and to see almost the level of shock on his face when he is still called a nigger by somebody he admires and respects. And it even goes into the conversation later how Malcolm is telling him how the league just uses you for this and blah, blah, blah. And then, he tells him, "I'm eventually going to leave the league and make a transition into movies." But Leslie Odom Jr., the soul he gave as the portrayal of Sam Cooke. And I didn't know that Leslie Odom Jr. could sing like that, and it touched my soul in so many ways. To watch him actually sing and not voice tracking or lip syncing and having someone else sing. I didn't know that he had done an original song for the film until the end of the movie. But for me, it was when he was on the Tonight Show at the end, and the first time he sung "A Change Is Gonna Come." Now, a little backstory to me: my mom passed away at the age of 50 in 2007, and my mother's favorite song was "A Change Is Gonna Come." And there hasn't been a moment in almost 14 years, where I've not heard that song and I have not found myself in tears. It is reminiscent of my mom. If you listen to the song and the message of the song, it gets you there. And again, I'm in that moment. I think I'm listening to Sam Cooke. I don't think I'm listening to Leslie Odom Jr. I think this is phenomenal. And again, yes, there are times you are reminded that, this is a stage play. But I think if you don't know that it's a stage play, you're like, it feels like a play. But it's one of those things that really, I really got into. I was emotionally vested in everybody. Even at the end, also seeing what happened to Malcolm, that we saw Malcolm X, that we've heard about numerous accounts, having the Molotov cocktail thrown through the window of his home and having to take his family outside, him with the shotgun ready. We hear earlier of Malcolm talking about, hey, he's been having the accounts of his life. He's been told to a young black reporter, and he knows he's being followed. Where we see later, where he's sitting at his desk afterwards in the hotel room, and it's the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley, the man who wrote Roots. So much emotion. But again, back to Leslie Odom Jr., his portrayal of Sam Cooke, it just got me in so many ways. To watch a man who performs and who's like, I'm selling number one hits here, but what about here? Meaning, I'm selling number one hits on the black charts. What about the pop charts? And it was a reminder that, yes, the segregation of black music to pop music, regular music, if you will, and how it no longer applies to an extent. You know, we'll look at certain categories, certain artists, and we'll be like, yo, they're mainstream. And when we say they're mainstream, they're adopted by white culture, is what that term basically means. But it even goes further than music. It goes into film. When I'm talking about this movie, but there are tons and tons of black films that get no credit. Now, don't get me wrong. I am always one who is quality over quantity. And yes, I will say that. Because just as much as there are trash white movies out, trash Asian movies out, there are trash black movies out. And so, yeah, all those films don't deserve that. But at the same time, it's that level in which the two of them are looked upon differently. And to see, like I said again, to see Sam bomb at the Copacabana, this is his dream to perform it. His goal was to hit that legendary stage. And because he knew that I can blow this stage out the water. But bombs it because no one cares. And it is only until after he performs Changes Will Come, I believe, on Tonight Show, that he goes back to the Copa and is well received by everybody. And it takes that mainstream introduction. Again, you think about that, like I said, acting, comedies, sports are different because you're always going to be on a mainstream stage because of sports, professional sports, if you will. But it's just so amazing to see. And I will say this, after I talk about the film in itself, I want to talk about his director again, Regina King. For this to be her directorial debut, to have it where, to have the eye to say, give us these shots, show us this emotion, show us an overhead, show us a mirror shot that keeps all of our stars in scene, show me this particular moment to give me this level of motion. And even Lance Reddick in the film, there's just so much in which she brings that she gives to you without giving it to you, because now we're so used to Regina King being the actor we see. We're so used to Regina King being the one to give us that emotion, to give us that life in front of the camera, but now she's doing it behind the camera. And I'll be honest, I don't know why we need an Oscar ceremony this year. I know it's tradition. I know there are people who can say, well, there are other directors that are worthy. This is absolutely true. But I don't know any film that came out in 2020, whether it be in the minimal time theaters were open or virtually, that had a director that encapsulated so much raw emotion, energy, life, love, hope, as Regina King has with her direction, One Night in Miami. Now, I know I said earlier when I started this that many people go into films and shows and whatever with highly touted reviews and hype, one way or another, whether it's good hype or bad hype. But you should go into it for yourself. This is true. I agree. But if you are going to take a word on it, take mine. You will let yourself enjoy. Again, it's not a real account of what happened. So if you're going to thinking, damn, how do you know this? It's not a real account. It's a fictitious account. But you could see it being real. The whole thing. Because yes, there are some moments that are real, that really did happen. But when you put the four of them together and everything, all right. So I hope you check it out, man. And I want to know if you've watched it, if you've had the chance to sit down and just enjoy this film. Let me know what you think about it in those comments down below, all right? And while you're here, make sure you click on the like button and subscribe to the channel, because I'm dropping more reviews nonstop day by day, so I want to hear from you, all right? Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Mr. J Washington. That's MRJAY. You should know how to spell Washington. Ooh, excuse me. Check out the Mad Titan podcast. Everywhere you get your podcast from, I get you caught up on all the things happening in the Marvel and DC live action cinematic universes. It is barbershop talk for nerds, so come on in that convo. If you want to support me over on Patreon, join my supervillain squad, patreon.com/Mr. J Washington, and check me out every Tuesday and Thursday live, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, for Blurs in the Hood with myself and Winston A. Marshall. We talk about news, pop culture, politics, entertainment, sports, and everything in between, and we are unapologetically black the entire time. It is a barrel of laughs and a whole bunch of fun, and our community is growing, and we want you to be a part of that community, all right? I will holler at you guys later. Till then, take care. I'm out. Bye.